from the Salt Lake Valley. The situation still being fluid. Here come the two Joes with the Two Joes podcast. We're back. Yeah, we're back. I'm your host, Main Joe, and on the line via Bluetooth and cell phone technology is Mojo.
Hello, hello. Very nice to be with you again. And Main Joe, once again, may I say thanks for getting me out of my house. And I love it. Even though that's not really fair.
That's great, yeah. I mean, it gives me something to look forward to and something to do other than just, whatever it is I do. Just something something for me, yeah.
Yeah, it's something to look forward to. And I love watching these YouTube clips of creative ways that people and friends and family are finding ways to stay busy and occupy themselves and be creative even, doing jigsaw puzzles or making little fountains, in their house out of Play-Doh and stuff.
Wow.
It's cool stuff.
It's very cool.
I've liked it. Yeah.
Huh.
But, to be fair and truthful to our audience, I actually did get out of the house today for an extended period of time.
Wow.
Yeah. I went to golf down in Utah County, and I was so lucky to be able to do it. It was a beautiful day, nice and sunny and calm. I had my hoodie on and my beanie, so my ears didn't get cold. And a golf course really is a great way to do social distancing and still be out there.
I agree.
The people behind you are 300 yards behind you, and the people in front of you are on the green. So the only thing you got to worry about is when you're paying your green fees in the pro shop. And other than that, and then wash your hands and go hit the ball around the course. So it was sure nice to get out there. And I played today alongside Conga Joe and the elder Check Joe. And the very first tee, they all hit beautiful drives right down the middle of the fairway, and I skunked one into the weeds. And the elder Check Joe said, "Wow, it looks like you haven't played in a couple of weeks, have you?" And well, no, it's been like 6 months since I swung a golf club. But yeah, it's been a long time. Man, it was nice to be out there and drink a few cold beers and feel the sun on your face, and it was a very good day.
I'll bet.
It made me start wondering, Main Joe, if you've heard anything about how does COVID-19 spread? I mean, can it spread just on the breeze? I mean, it was a calm day, but there was a breeze kicked up here and there. And I mean, can that blow the virus right into your nose, into your lungs? I don't know if it spreads that way.
It does.
Or if you've got to be.
It does spread
that way.
If someone sneezes in your general direction, that virus can last in the air. I think it's like for an hour. I want to say maybe less. I don't know, but it's long enough that it spreads just like the flu. Essentially, you can definitely get it that way.
Yeah. So, I guess I can catch it on a golf course or when I go to 7-Eleven and get my big gulp every morning. I guess, it's going to happen. It'll happen.
Yeah. Well, just keep your hands washed and disinfect and clean things maybe more often than usual. Like I try to develop healthy habits. We're going through disinfecting wipes. I'm washing my hands a lot. I'm doing my best not to touch my face. I had to go to the grocery store the other day. I'm walking down the aisle, and you know how sometimes you get one of those itches in your face, and it's just like, whoa, where'd that come from? And I was like, don't you dare scratch it. Don't you dare. And I just did my best to ignore it, and then before too long, it was gone. So I was like, all right.
Yeah, there you go. The grocery store. You mentioned heading to the grocery store, and I've watched on social media, I've seen a number of memes come up or just people ranting and saying, you know what, tell you, when you come to the grocery store, just come by yourself. Don't bring your kids. Don't bring your whole family. Just one cart, one person. And I get that.
That's a good point. I did see some of that at my local Smith's. Yeah, they had families in there because they don't have nothing to do. They want to get out of the house too, and they're bringing them to the store. And it's like, really? I saw an elderly couple with their masks on at the store, and I'm like, really? You both needed to come and risk your health? Because obviously they're taking it seriously. They're wearing masks out in public, and I was like, wow, okay, that's an interesting decision.
Well, and kids too. They're always grabbing a
Oh,
Snickers bar or a bag of licorice or their favorite cereal. And Mom, can we get this? Can we get
yeah,
that?
they touch everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So I totally understand those sentiments, but I also think there's got to be many examples of a single mom or a single dad at home with a kid or two or three. And what are they supposed to do? They've got to go get groceries, and
Right.
they can't leave their 6 and 4 and 2-year-old at home. What are they supposed to do?
That's a different
I guess to
situation.
live.
Absolutely, yeah. But the
Yeah.
family I saw at Smith's, they had like a 12, 13, 14-year-old daughter, and she could have easily stayed home and tended the brothers and sisters. I don't know what they were doing.
Well, that begs the observation also is, in this time of economic downturn where so many people are out of work now,
Oh man.
I'm hearing that Amazon and Domino's and Walmart are desperate for delivery people.
Yeah.
And so, do you really need to go to the grocery store, or just call up Walmart or Target and say, bring me some lettuce and some mac and cheese and a gallon of milk and bring it to my house? I mean, that was around well before COVID-19.
Yeah.
Is that, are they? I guess they're looking to. I think what was the number? Amazon is looking to hire 100,000 people in their fulfillment centers.
Yeah.
Not just to deliver the orders, but to get them to the trucks and boxed up and everything. I think I heard something like that. Domino's is looking to hire like 10,000 people right now. So we're I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Should we look at the numbers again, though? I'm staring at some stats right now. This was of about 3 hours ago.
Mm-hmm.
Global confirmed cases is 664,000.
Wow.
And deaths, what does it say? 31,000 plus deaths total. And United States, 122,000 confirmed cases and 2,000 confirmed deaths due to COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Have you heard any good news on this one, Main Joe? Like South Korea, China. So those are the ones I keep hearing about. That they're, I don't want to say turned the corner and everything's back to normal, but have you heard any good news on COVID-19?
I'm sorry, I have not. Even Hong Kong, who was lightening the restrictions and everything and letting people or encouraging people to go out to restaurants and bars again, they had another uptick, so they had to send them all back home. They were like, oh,
wow.
Yeah, so nothing in the good news department, I'm afraid.
Man, sad stuff.
It is.
Well, I hate to amplify the bad news that you just gave us, but I remember like 3 days ago hearing learning some more about the Spanish flu back in 1918, and that actually came in 2 waves. I don't know if you knew, but yeah,
I did.
So the first one, so the first one went from like fall through spring, then it kind of tapered, and it killed a lot of people. Let's not minimize it. It killed 5 or 10 million people. And then it kind of tapered off through the hot months, through the summer months, and then came back with a huge vengeance and killed another 40 or 50 million after that. So, it's, sorry to Joe's listeners. I don't mean to be a downer, but that could be what we face here. Is if we get too complacent and pull out of this too soon, then, oh boy, it could come back in exponentially worse than it is now.
Yeah, and in general, we have to expect it to come and go in waves. It's kind of how these things work. Spanish flu is a good example.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, I do like to talk about some of the calming voices that we hear out there. And there's a number of them. The one I'd like to bring up, and you and I have spoken with him off podcast before, Beau of the Fifth Column. You've heard me mention him.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And he's a guy with, you see his picture and you just think hillbilly, shotgun, shoot a possum, make some rabbit stew type of guy. That's what you'd think, but that is not him. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I know his picture. I've come across his videos on YouTube. I can't say that I resonate with him really well, so I don't think I've subscribed or anything. But I definitely,
Yeah.
I realize that he is kind of a progressive voice, right?
Well, he really is. Yeah. And he's a diehard Republican. He does not vote Democrat, no matter what. But
Mm.
he rips Trump to shreds. And not just for how Trump's handled COVID-19, but for many other reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a calming voice. He's a reasonable person out there saying, this is what's happening. This is what to expect. Don't panic. The trucks are still rolling. Our supply chain is still solid. The toilet paper and the chicken breast are still on their way. Don't worry. And I watched one the other day that I thought was so cool of him to say. He's ex-military or former military, served with distinction and was honorably discharged. And he was responding to some reports. He had seen some headlines about I think it was either National Guard or maybe it was even regular Army troops coming in, wearing their fatigues, the boots and the camo and, wearing their helmets and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he just simply wanted to calm everybody down and reassure the populace. He lives down in, I think, Georgia or Florida somewhere. And he just want to say, listen, these troops, and they are troops, they're not like ex-military or contractors or anything. These are regular troops coming in, but all they're doing is to come in and set up massive hospitals and intake centers and processing centers and testing centers and things like that. That's what these troops are trained to do. That is who you're going to see, if you see them at all, in your town or in a parking lot of a high school or something like that. Don't panic. They're not here to impose martial law. In fact, he went as far as to say these troops coming in are not even trained on how to impose martial law. They don't know how to do that. They don't know what that even means. They are there to set up infrastructure. So, don't freak out. Don't spread fake news. Don't spread panic, and these types of things. And I'm just glad that guys like Beauregard, I think it's his full name, Beauregard, that people like him are out there trying to calm us down and give us some reason.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that, but if that's happening, yeah, I could see how some people could take that the wrong way. Interesting.
Yeah, indeed. Well, do you know the name Jade Helm?
No.
Familiar with that? Did you? It was a military exercise that took place back in 2014 under President Obama, and it was like a 6-week or an 8-week military exercise taking place in a few counties down in Texas. And Texas is a huge state, just giant. But a lot of the people in some neighboring towns started going to judges and different local authorities saying, this is a takeover. That Obama is sending the military in to put us all in FEMA camps and concentration camps and take away our freedom and take our gun and all this kind of stuff. And, the people like Beau of the Fifth Column are saying, no, that is not what's going on. And he did an expose saying, listen, they did the exact same exercise in the exact same area under George W. Bush. So why didn't people freak out under George W. Bush? Because they freaked out under Obama.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so there's reasonable people out there, and again, the big thing, the worst thing that anybody can do is freak out. If you don't stay calm, you really decrease your chances of a good outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, but fear drives us so much. It's a tough one. If you're not, self-aware and you don't know what's going on, then you can succumb to it. You can give in to this fear thing. That fear must be why people are buying all the toilet paper and buying all the chicken breasts, right? They're fearful. They're trying to prepare for the worst. I heard that even seed stores and things like that are just packed to the. People are just buying everything, all the seeds, even if they're not gardeners, and they're YouTubing how to do an above ground garden kind of thing, a box garden. People
how do you grow tomatoes?
People are kind of freaking out. I mean, I don't know if I would call it panic or fear, but they're preparing themselves and they're preparing for the worst. They're preparing for long-term self-quarantining and self-isolating, and it could go a while, no one knows. It's just really, it's just a delicate situation, and it's fluid, and it changes all the time. Like in Salt Lake the other day, I think they finally came out and said, I think it was Friday, our governor, Gary Herbert, gave the stay-at-home order. He issued that on Friday. And then Salt Lake City did the same, only theirs carries some restrictions and makes compliance mandatory for city residents.
Yeah.
So that's actually got some muscle behind it, whereas the governor's is please self-isolate, please stay home. But the Salt Lake mayor, she came out and said, okay, if you don't stay home, you could be fined and stuff. So interesting times.
It truly is. And, Conga Joe and I were talking about that before golf today.
Yeah.
And he mentioned, I forget our mayor's name now, McMullen or McKillen or McCall.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I don't know it. Well, it's not my mayor. I don't live in Salt Lake City.
Well, true. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I do
mean,
either. No,
I talked to a friend the other day. He said some of the golf courses that he likes are closed. I was kind of surprised that when you said you went golfing that you found one that was open. But I guess if you're far enough south where it's not so populated, things are still kind of moving and humming and business as usual.
Yeah, all the Salt Lake County courses are closed. Bonneville and Rose Park and a lot of those. But but thank heaven the elder Chet Joe, he loves his golf, so he searched all around high and low and found one for us. But back to this the one that has some muscle, this stay-at-home order.
Right.
I think Conga Joe even mentioned that you might have to go and apply for and be issued a card that if you're found out on the street, you better have this card with you saying you have reason to be there. That you have some essential function that you're performing. Then I started thinking, you know what? There's no way to really enforce that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How does that work? You make yourself a note to go to the grocery store? I mean,
well, yeah, my kid is at home having an asthma attack. I've got to go get an inhaler now. That is essential. So how do you really? And so what I'm kind of thinking is, the governments have done this throughout history, is they put out one of these draconian decrees, and they do it as just a way to further amplify the situation, how serious it is. Stay home, Then now, granted, if you get caught, you're not going to jail. You're not going to be fined. You might get a talking to or something like that, but there's going to be no real penalty. But they're simply trying to animate it a little bit higher, and I guess just spread the word about how serious this really is. Politicians and governments have been doing that since the beginning of time. So, who are we to say that they're wrong to do it now?
Yeah, I tell you, every time I think we're in a unique situation and why is the government doing this way and why are they doing it that way, if you look back in history just a little bit, you'll see that it's just a repeat. It seems like, anyway.
Yeah.
If you think the situation's so bad, well, just go back in time a little bit. St. Louis shut down in 1918 to avoid spreading that Spanish flu.
Yeah. And what state didn't? What city didn't?
Philadelphia didn't, right? And they paid a heavy price.
Exactly right. Yeah. I think they had 50,000 deaths in the following 10 days or something like that. It was really something else,
Right. Yeah.
Well, this again begs. Did you read the headlines about the proposed or alleged quarantine of New York and maybe New Jersey? Now, what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I heard Trump was considering it. That's all I heard, but I didn't read any further into it. Yeah. So I don't know that's going to happen. So as far as New York, go ahead.
Well, I heard Governor Cuomo came out and said, well, not only is that not enforceable, that is absolutely illegal. That's essentially the federal government declaring war on a state, saying that we're going to blockade you. Nothing comes in or out. Nobody or anything gets in or out for however long. And that just, I don't know. To me, I want to use Trump's own words here. The cure is worse than the problem itself. And in that case, that might be true. Because there are people in New York who next week absolutely have to be in Los Angeles, matter of life and death type of stuff. So I don't know, a full-on 100% hardcore quarantine. I just can't see it happening. I don't see, first, how it's enforceable, and second, why something that extreme would be required.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a good one. I don't know. At what point can you justify something like that? It doesn't seem to me. I mean, but yet we have a word called martial law, which you were just talking about. I mean, it's not unheard of to implement such a law in times of emergencies, and this is kind of an emergency. So when do you enforce that?
Yeah.
That's a type of quarantine. That's a curfew. That's, you have to have a reason to be out and about, right? I mean, that's pretty much quarantine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's what martial law means. They can set some arbitrary curfew.
Mm-hmm.
If you are found walking the street past 10 p.m., then you are subject to arrest, imprisonment, fines, whatever. And, that's, I don't know. How many countries in the world even, well, no, let's make it more specific. What was the last country in the world that declared martial law? Maybe Syria or Sudan, Yemen?
Well, we'd have to define what that means. I mean, look, Italy's been in lockdown. Well, what does that mean? Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's lockdown mean? Is that a type of martial law enforcement? Is that a type of quarantine? Right now, they're asking us, please self-quarantine. Please stay home. Self-isolate.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and Salt Lake City's coming out and saying, look, if you're out on unnecessary stuff, you are subject to fine and imprisonment. I mean, it's mandatory for city residents.
Yeah. Well, I guess China, did something similar.
They did. Theirs, of course, was more extreme. I don't know why, but they were pulling people out of their apartments that showed signs or symptoms and dragging them to the hospital, where in some cases they weren't sick with the COVID-19 virus. They were sick with some other cold or flu. And then they get drugged into a hospital full of COVID-19 patients. Guess what? Well, they get COVID-19 now. Maybe they didn't have it before. But then the hospitals got so full, so they started just welding door shuts, in these apartment buildings. It was crazy to see on this video I saw.
Yeah, either dragging them out of their home,
or welding them in,
shutting them in, welding them in. Yeah,
that's crazy.
That's pretty extreme.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I wish I could trust the statistics coming out of China right now.
I
don't know. Yeah.
I think our government's capable of a lot. I'd like to believe that they're got our best interest at heart, and if they decide to quarantine or to enforce martial law, it's the right choice. But it's a scary prospect for sure.
Yeah, and and that has so many dark sides to it. I mean, if you start sending patrols out to make sure there's nobody on the street, and you also better start sending patrols out to make sure that elderly people have enough food and have their oxygen tanks and their medicine. You better make sure kids are hungry. I mean, how do you, that is just a nightmare. Talk about a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard enough. It's difficult enough to just go patrol the streets and make sure nobody's on the streets. But then how do you go care for some people that might really be suffering? Who, all they want is a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread, but they can't go get it. That is 10 times the nightmare, 100 times worse. I don't know, at times like this, man, Joe, I do not envy our elected officials, the authorities in charge. I don't envy them in times like this.
True.
Most other times I do. They're walking around capitals and gilded halls and quarters of power. They've got cushy $180,000 a year jobs and travel on our dime and all this kind of stuff. But times like this, I'm glad I'm not in Trump's shoes or Cuomo's or any governor or mayor. I don't envy them their task right now. Not at all.
Tough decisions they're up against, and it's like, have you heard anything about the vote for the stimulus package? I think our last podcast was on Thursday, and we talked about it briefly then. We said, well, the Senate passed it, so now it goes to the House on Friday. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, and it was passed. The House did pass it, and Trump signed it into law.
Yep.
Yeah.
And have you heard anything else about it?
I've heard Mnuchin say that many Americans should start seeing a check within 3 weeks, I believe, and that it was $2.1 trillion, with Pelosi saying there's more likely more to come. Other than that, I haven't. Do you know anything that I might not?
Well, I just don't. I know what my pundits say. Some of the people I listen to, like Jimmy Dore, for example, he was upset about it, big time upset. He was like,
in which way?
Well, he calls it the largest. Well, AOC was on the floor of the House basically before she voted for it. She was up there saying, look, this is the largest corporate bailout with as few strings as possible in American history.
Mm-hmm.
So basically that $500 billion we talked about on Thursday remained in the bill, and it has few, if any, strings on it for corporations. $500 billion.
And was there also something in there, some writer on the bill that said that we will not know where that money went for at least 6 months by law?
Yeah,
the politicians are not required to say which corporations got how much money,
if ever. And this is one of those hard decisions, right? You got Bernie and AOC. They looking at this bill and they're like, oh my God, look at this corporate handout again, biggest in American history. No strings attached. Here, rich people have $500 billion on us. But yet,
here's some more.
Yeah, but yet they can't vote against it because it gives money out to the workers, at least something. They called it crumbs. I think AOC and Jimmy Dore both called it crumbs. And but how? I mean, if that's the best we can get, because it's a Republican-controlled Senate, so it's not like we can go back and rewrite this bill. People need it. They need some relief, some stimulus now.
They need something now. Exactly.
So I mean, man, I'd hate to be AOC and Bernie in this case, and you have to vote for it, even though you know it's a piece of shit bill.
Yeah. Mange, I would have loved to have heard of just one corporation. And take your pick, whether Delta Airlines or ExxonMobil or GM or any one of them, come out and do a headline or a press release saying, hey, listen, the economy's been really good, past few, 3, 5, 7 years. And plus, we just got a massive tax break back in 2017. And we were smart. We saved up a lot of money. We have capital and reserves. We're okay for the next 6 months. We don't need any help from the government. Wouldn't you love to have heard just one of them come out and say something like that? Just one of them.
Yeah.
But no. Not one of them. All of them pretty much came out and said, well, we're going to lay people off. If we don't get hundreds of billions or tens of billions from the government, we got to lay people off. There's nothing else we can do. So, all right, Republicans in the Senate, do your thing. And,
wish us luck.
Man, here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Although that's unfair of me to say Republicans in the Senate, because it did pass the Senate unanimous. It was 97-0.
Again, though, those poor Democrats, I mean, they were between a rock and a hard place. Either vote for the Republican bill or be called someone who didn't want to help out when help was desperately needed.
The American, you're right. You're right. How do you vote against it?
It's so tough, yeah. I mean, even Bernie and AOC, both of them gave impassioned speeches before their constituents or before their peers in the House and the Senate, and both voted for it. So both knew it was a piece of shit. Both had to vote for it. Yeah. It's just crazy.
Well, it goes back to that meme we discussed on Thursday that, the Republicans say, okay, we're going to make sandwiches for everybody in America. We really need sandwiches, but we all get ham sandwiches and the rest of America gets poop sandwiches.
Crumbs. Yeah.
And then the Democrats say, well, that's not going to help. Well, okay, Democrats don't want America to have sandwiches. Here you go. So you're right. You're exactly right. The Democrats were absolutely behind the rock. They had no choice.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
So, yeah, you were talking
Um,
about a ray of good news. I did hear a ray of good news just before the podcast, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't give you exact details. But I guess the bank Wells Fargo sent out something where they're not going to do any evictions or foreclosures during this time. The bank itself has
okay.
taken it
All
upon
right.
itself to do this. I thought that was pretty awesome. Yeah. And I think
That's good news.
they also have some programs to give low interest loans and stuff like that out, which, again, is, I don't know what that means, but there at least was one bank that is trying to help without being forced to help. So that's a little ray of sunshine, a little good news there. Granted,
That is good.
Granted, Wells Fargo has some making up to do because they fucked up by opening up all those accounts and without people knowing it. So yeah, they got some ass kissing to do, but that was nice to see, and it's a step in the right direction for them for sure.
That's a ray of light that's welcome, and I've seen similar posts on social media about nothing as big as Wells Fargo, but just some landlords around the country saying posting notices, and then this notice will get scanned and posted to social media, and it'll say something along the lines of, with this going on, and I know that you work in the service industry, and I also know that your roommate works at an airline, and she's laid off right now. There's no flights going on. So your rent is immediately cut in thirds, and if you can't pay, we'll come up with a payment plan. I will cover your utilities through the duration of this, and so we'll get through this together, essentially. And I'm sure there's countless examples like that.
I'd like to think so,
but,
yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to hear one as big as Wells Fargo doing something humane, finally,
Yeah.
That's a nice thing. But I don't know if I texted you or did we talk about it during a recent podcast that my niece was in New York. She was going to go to a taping of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, she was in line. She was in line outside Ed Sullivan Theater with her tickets when it was announced that they're not going to be having a studio audience that night. I don't know if I told you about this.
You didn't tell me about this. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the Wednesday they had a studio audience. Thursday they were supposed to have one Thursday and Friday, but I guess that's about when Rudy Gobert of the Jazz was diagnosed, and Tom Hanks was diagnosed, and just started spreading like wildfire. Or at least we started learning about it.
Right.
And so they sent everybody away, and then my sister, my niece's mom, of course, and my nephew just immediately got on the phone with my niece and said, "You get your ass home now. You get out of New York." So she came home. That was, I don't know, 10, 12 days ago. And I think it was just this last Tuesday. My sister texted me that my 22-year-old niece, healthy by every measure, active, beautiful young lady, that she's starting to feel kind of achy and has a little bit of a dry, raspy cough. No fever yet, anything like that, but just kind of feeling a little symptomatic. And so, oh, great. So now it has finally affected someone I know and love.
Wow.
So far, Main Joe, you and I have been pretty insulated. Do you know anybody? Do you have any friends or family? Any coworkers, former coworkers who have been affected?
Nope. I've been in touch with all of them too, and so far nobody has been coming down with any symptoms at all. Do you know if it's COVID-19 or not? Could be just a cold or allergies. No, because that's the thing.
Could very well be that.
That's the other headline I saw, is that America is still trying to play catch up with testing. I mean,
yes, we are.
There's some. I saw some video of them doing automobile testing like they did in South Korea and Washington, and they had a doctor on saying, "Yeah, that's good for videos, that's good for PR or whatever," but it really doesn't do anything to help you contain the virus spread.
Yeah. Well, she did call a number of hospitals around and health clinics, and they all told her the same thing. But first, they asked her, how old are you? What's your history? Do you have any pre-existing conditions? Are you immunocompromised? All these things, they took her through those questions. And then they said, well, okay, you are in one of those very fortunate groups that where even if you have it, you're very unlikely to suffer really bad effects or die,
Right.
So they essentially told her that if your symptoms persist after another 2, 3, 4 days, or if they worsen, if you develop a huge fever, then get yourself down here. Then come in. but they were saying, even here in Utah, I think we have still less than 500 or 600 cases total.
Mm-hmm.
But even here in Utah, they're gearing up. They're saying if you're in one of the less at risk groups and your symptoms aren't that severe, stay home. Take some cold medicine or some what do they call that, flu? Some kind of a flu medication that can help, and get a lot of sleep, drink a lot of fluids, and you'll probably ride it out. You'll probably be okay. And so then Thursday night, after our podcast, my sister called or texted me and said, your niece has now developed a fever. And she just measured herself. She's at 101. And I went, oh boy, here we go. So then she texted and said, well, Mojo, if she has to go into a hospital, can I rely on you? Because my sister lives out of state. She said, can I rely on you to go and make sure she gets to the hospital okay? And of course I said, yeah, you bet. If she needs food, let me know. I'll be there. It's my niece, of course, whatever it takes.
Right.
Then I did some research, Main Joe, and I started feeling a little bit uneasy about my answer. My sister, of course, asked, can you make a mask out of a towel or a bandana? Do you have some eye protection or, something, rubber gloves, all that? And of course I do. We can make that stuff at home easy enough. But then I did some research on the efficiency or efficacy of the masks that we make. And they really don't protect you from contracting the coronavirus. I mean, you've got to have full headgear to be protected, and the rubber breathing masks to be protected. So if you just dampen a bandana and spread it around your nose and mouth, that does nothing to stop coronavirus. Nothing. And then the measurements are alarming. The width of a coronavirus is measured in microns, and it's like 1 or 2 microns is how big this thing is. And you take your average bandana or wet, washcloth, and it's like 7 or 10 microns apart. So, that's like shooting a BB through a tennis net. It just won't stop it. It just doesn't. So then I started thinking, what do I say then? If my niece calls me after this podcast and says, Uncle, I need you to take me to the hospital. I've got a bad fever. Then what do I do? Do I just bite the bullet and go pick her up and take my chances? Or say, you know what, I'm going to call you an ambulance. Niece, do I just call her an ambulance? What do I say? It's
well,
I don't know, it's a tough situation.
It is tough. It's not like you can't drive yourself to the emergency room if you've got the coronavirus. I mean, you got a fever and you got a sore throat and a cough. I mean, it's not like it's going to stop you from driving. I mean, she should be able to drive herself, and she's the one who should be wearing the mask, right? That makes a little more sense to me, to keep those droplets that, the coronavirus is in when you sneeze or cough from getting out. I mean,
that's true too. Yeah.
Maybe a droplet could get through there. Maybe a single coronavirus thing could get through the mask. I don't know. I think it's got to help some. I would still try the mask, even though it's better than nothing, I think. Yeah. And so if it's you bring the mask for her, not for yourself. You have her sit in the back seat, and then you just make sure you don't touch your face, and you wash your hands. And when she's admitted and you've got her taken care of, then you make sure you disinfect your car with those disinfecting wipes, and and hope for the best. I mean, there's no guarantees out there. I mean, you took a chance going golfing today. You don't know.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that was one of the thoughts I had afterwards is, even if she is infected with COVID-19 and does have a fever and a cough, she can still safely drive herself to the hospital. I think you're right there. I think you're right. But when it comes down to it, my niece is one of you played music.
She's
with her.
Pretty special.
And, she is a special young lady, and I'd say, oh, what the hell? I'll go pick her up.
I think I would. Yeah, I'd have her sit in the back, wear a mask, but I'd take my precautions, but I would be there for her for sure. Yeah.
Well, I even thought it might be kind of funny too. I don't have one of those full-on face protective masks, but I do have a Darth Vader helmet that I could wear.
You know what? I tell you what, better than nothing.
It is, yeah. And this thing fits tight around your neck and your whole head, and it comes in two pieces. One goes over your face, and the helmet goes over your head. And hey, when you're breathing in this thing, you sound like Darth Vader. And so it'd be kind of funny.
That would be kind of funny. Well, I wish her well, man. I hope she gets over this quickly and it's no big thing. Even for young people, though, it's going to be weird. I hear your lungs get really heavy and it's weird. It's kind of unlike anything you've experienced before. And I've heard even if you're young enough and your immune system's strong enough and you fight it off, it could still potentially do lung damage. So I just wish her the best, man. I hope it's just some kind of weird cold flu thing and it's not this COVID-19 thing, because it's a nasty thing, man. Even for people that are going to fight it off.
Well, that's an important thing you mentioned there also, is these young people out there partying on the beach in spring break, and I'm a low risk. I'll take my chance. Well, that's fine. You might get it. You might suffer mildly for a week or two and then recover, but there can still be lasting damage done to your lungs, at the age of 20 or 22. Yeah. So, and the severity of that damage, of course, will vary based on who it is. But you want to take that chance. It makes me wonder about the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, who have now been totally cleared of COVID-19.
Really?
They are. Yeah, they've been found that the virus is no longer in their system.
How many weeks has that been? Do you know? It seems like it's only
2 now.
Yeah, it seems like it's only been a month max, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I think it was 2 weeks ago, just last Wednesday, when they were both diagnosed.
Seems like ages ago, but that's pretty quick then to be because I watched that video of the couple that was on that Princess Cruise in Japan, and even though he was feeling better, he was sitting in that Japanese hospital. He was still testing positive. So it's not like as soon as you're over the symptoms, it's gone and you can't spread it anymore. But as soon as he tested negative, they kicked him out the door and sent him home. He had to ask for a few more hours to stay in the hospital so he could arrange a flight and a hotel and everything. But as soon as you test negative, they want you out of that hospital so they can get the next person in there.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It begs the question again. I mean, neither of us will have an answer to this one, but, even somebody as young and, not just healthy, but I'm talking the peak of physical health, like Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
So he was confirmed positive with the virus. He says that he never felt any symptoms whatsoever.
Really?
Never even had a cough.
That's good.
Never had a fever. Yeah, it was great. But can even that still have caused some damage that he doesn't know about and maybe won't know about until he's 50?
Probably.
30 years from now, 20, maybe it could,
It could.
And does it just sit there and gestate? Can it sit there dormant for years and years, like HPV or like herpes? I understand that the genital herpes hides out near your tailbone. That's where it finds a home and just sits there, and then all of a sudden, 8 years later, it'll just flare up. It'll find perfect conditions based on something you ate or a country you traveled to or you reached a certain age or something happened, and boom, there it is, years later. These things, I don't know.
That's a great, great question. I don't think we know enough yet. I don't think we haven't been studying this virus long enough to know the answer to that question. That is a great question. I mean, we don't even know that after you have it, are you immune to it, or are you less likely to catch it, or how does that work? We don't know the answer to that one yet, as far as I know.
Great question. I've heard conflicting things on that. I'll sit there today. I was doing dishes before golfing, and I just let the YouTube clips run one after another. And then I heard one of them say, okay, many people who have recovered in China, we have found them now to be immune. They cannot be infected again. But then I would hear another one saying, we don't know that for sure. We're not sure if that's true. So, there's another bit where just
a lot of
I'm not
misleading
saying it.
information out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw something similar today. I saw a doctor showing you how to, when you get your grocery bags home from the grocery store, how to handle your groceries so you're not bringing the virus into your home. He's showing you how to disinfect, how to separate packaging and whatnot. It was a good little video, but in the video, he specifically said, if it's warmer, that's going to keep the virus from spreading as fast or as much. So that he was like, the heat is going to, tamp it down or whatever. Same thing Trump was saying. And now, but on the other hand, you look at, okay, well, China's on the north half of the hemisphere and Australia's on the southern half of the hemisphere. They both had virus spreads there. So I don't think that applies to this virus. But I haven't heard conclusively one way or the other. I've heard both. Have you heard anything conclusively on that?
Not conclusive. I heard this exactly what you just said, where Australia is now entering their winter months, and we are starting to enter our summer months, and we are seeing no change whatsoever.
No slowdown.
Other than what they can, the small percentage that they can measure, the social distancing and the stay at home and things like that. They can see some effect from that, but that has nothing to do with how hot or cold it is outside. Zero.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's not affected by heat. It's just my general observation. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I have heard, and I'm pretty sure I can trust this one, is that the COVID-19, like many viruses, they hate sunlight, ultraviolet radiation. They will not survive long in that. So that made me also feel good about going out golfing today. It was a bright, sunny, beautiful day, But again, that the ultraviolet radiation has nothing to do with how hot or cold it is. It can be a bright, sunny day in Antarctica, and it'll still kill the COVID-19. Because it just does not like sunlight. It doesn't last long.
Sunlight in general is a good disinfecting type of thing, I think. I saw one survival manual say that if you've got no other way to purify your water, just fill up a jug and let it sit in the sunlight for a while. And, that's a decent way to disinfect your water or whatever.
Yeah, well, they like, well, again, that's how genital infections do so well, is your genitals are always in the dark and it's warm and moist. And those are ideal conditions for those things to survive and thrive, And I'm assuming COVID-19, it must be something similar. That they don't want to be in your stomach with a lot of acid. That kills it.
True.
But, man, they love being in your lungs. That's where they are right at home. And,
that's what makes this virus so deadly and scary, is because breathing is so important to human life. That and your heartbeat, man.
Well, that and fresh water, and and the deadliness of this virus is not the main concern, really. I mean, it is certainly a concern, but it's just how fast this thing has spread. It is, we already know it's the fastest spreading pandemic of the 20th century. And we've had at least a dozen of them in the 20 years since the century started.
That's a good point.
And this one,
and it proves to be hard to contain, and it spreads fast. And I saw I think the New York Times reported that with the current trends, New York metro area has had less success in flattening the curve at this point in its outbreak than Wuhan or Lombardy, which is Italy, did at the same point in theirs. And other American metropolitan areas appear to be on a similar path. So we are not doing as good a job as China, which was extreme, their measures that they took, or Lombardy, Italy, which I'm not sure the extent of the measures they took there, but it's not looking good as far as us flattening that curve.
Well, it's another great point is, places like New York and I think even above Washington is New Orleans in Louisiana. I mean, talk about the perfect breeding ground.
Mm.
New York, essentially, is the center of the entire planet. That's where everybody goes to and comes from. New York is like the place on the planet.
It's a major hub.
And huge. And, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people going and coming every day.
Yep.
And then think about when Mardi Gras was happening. I think, what is that, like February 12th to 16th, something like that?
Yeah.
That is precisely when COVID was starting to spread.
Wow.
Huge. That's when human to human transition was in full effect.
Wow.
So
didn't even think about that, dude. I've been to Mardi Gras, and it is shoulder to shoulder, front to back. It's so packed in there. I saw a picture today of Cafe Du Monde shuttered and closed. I mean, I think that's probably the first time that's happened in, more than 50 years, 100 years. That place never closes. Mm-hmm. That was sad to see.
Yeah.
I also saw another one where they say because there's no one on Bourbon Street anymore, the rats are kind of like out there looking for food, because where there's normally food in the back alleys outside the restaurants and stuff where they get their food, it's not there anymore. So the rats are like just walking down the street trying to find food. Yeah, they're coming out.
Mm-hmm. I saw it was Indonesia or Singapore somewhere where the tourism has dropped to near zero. And so these monkeys, you know, these little 2-foot tall monkeys that rely on tourists to feed them every day, they're starting to swarm the streets and going through garbage cans and breaking into people's houses looking for a banana or a piece of pineapple.
I hadn't seen that, but I totally believe it. Yeah. Poor animals.
I saw footage.
I even saw footage of, I don't know where it was, but I saw footage of like a wild boar just trucking down the street looking for whatever he can find. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy times, dude. This is just unlike anything we've ever seen before. And from the economy to just the social crisis in general. I mean, my daughter's up in her room going crazy. Today I went out briefly to a friend's house to pick up something he left on his porch for me. And she was like, how did it feel to get out of this prison? She's going stir crazy, man. She's going stir crazy.
Well, it's still there, though. I mean, we can go for walks around the neighborhood.
Yeah, we're going to go for a walk tomorrow for sure, because, I haven't been doing my due diligence there. I should be trying harder to get her out of her room. Yeah, because it's you got to take care of your mental health and well-being as well.
Yeah. But I did want to kind of go back to some stats.
Sure, yeah.
And you know how I'm a figures guy. I'm a facts on the ground type of guy. So this Mardi Gras that happened 4 days of Mardi Gras, and there was a doctor. It was not Dr. Fauci. It was some lady, and she just talked common sense about this is what happened in Mardi Gras. So over the 4 days, not at any certain time, but over 4 days, they estimate there was like 1.3 million people who participated in Mardi Gras, down Bourbon Street and all through New Orleans.
Countless parades.
I'm sure. Yeah, just day and night.
It's just pandemonium down there. It's so much fun.
So you have all these, let's just use one example. You have all these floats going down in these parades. Mm-hmm. And let's say one person on one of the floats is infected with COVID-19.
Yes.
And is very contagious.
And throwing out candy.
So the beads.
And beads too.
The bead necklaces.
A lot of bead exchanging going on down there, yeah.
Tons of it. So let's say one infected person throws out, in the course of 2 hours, 150 bead necklaces. So there's 150 people infected, and then they're going to go to a bar and put that necklace around somebody else's neck, and there's an infection, and then boom. I mean, it's almost like a fission reaction.
Wow, yeah.
If you think about it.
I didn't even think about it, but yeah, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder they shut it down.
Oh yeah. It's what do you think about this, Main Joe? I have always despised sensationalistic news, sensationalism.
Yeah.
I've hated it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's so hard to know if it was sensationalism or truth until after the fact.
Right.
Until after you see it played out.
I hear you, man. Yeah.
And so I listened to Governor Cuomo in New York talking about, listen, we are going through what you are about to go through. And there's no changing that. That is a fact on the ground. We are, ground zero. So Chicago, you get ready. New Orleans, well, that's a bad example. But, and then, does he also mean like Dubuque, Iowa, and, Ames, Nebraska, and all these places? What we are going through, you are about to go through. Is that a little sensationalistic, do you think?
I want to say yes, but we've already talked about it on our podcast, how Utah hospitals are already low on supplies, and we've barely scratched the surface of this thing. It's going to get worse before it gets better, I think. We're only 2 weeks. We're only 2 weeks into this thing. And New York's, leading. They're the first ones to get affected, right? They're 10 days behind Italy. We're probably 10 days behind New York. So, yeah, let's give it 10 more days.
Yeah.
I hope we can flatten the curve where New York wasn't as successful as flattening the curve because they're so packed in there. Where we're a little bit more spread out here in this valley, but man, we all breathe the same air, and it's tough to know. We just have to wait and see. It's just like a similar thing is like this bill that they passed. I think it was who was it? Democracy Now! I don't know if you've heard of them. But they're essentially saying, they're like saying this is a corporate coup in a way. They were like saying this $2 trillion bill is really a $6 trillion bill, and it's probably going to get up to around 10 trillion by the time this is all said and done. But, that could be what you were saying. That's, you're, what's the word you used? Is it facts on the ground, or is that just sensationalism? You're just trying to get us all worried about the bill, and, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah. I mean, it's like that $1.5 trillion tax break they gave the rich. Well, that's what I thought it was, but then I found out later, when all was said and done, it was a little over $2 trillion. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Well, and that was only a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago. It was 2017 when that came into effect, and they're already broke. We've only been in this thing a month, and they're saying, oh, well, we're going under. We're going to have to lay everybody off. We're going to have to fire everybody until we get $80 billion or whatever it is.
But that's just it. The thing AOC was complaining about, there is no tie for them to keep their labor force. They don't have to keep it, even though they get the money. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is set up for a one-time $1,200 check for people making under $75,000 a year. I mean, one check. What, Australia gets 6 months? Canada is getting 4 months? One check for us. If you make less than $75,000.
One.
Yeah. So it's like I still don't know if I'm going to see any relief. Probably I'm not banking on it. I'm probably guessing that I'm out of this, how they have it structured, because I was self-employed and everything. I don't expect to see anything. But the corporations will see something. Hey, I'm an S corp. Maybe I can jump in on that gravy train. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I'm a C corp. And I'm supposed to get a break too,
nice.
But who knows?
Who knows?
But again, it does make me wonder though, Main Joe, is, why are we bailing out the airline because they threaten to lay everybody off? I mean, 90% of their workforce is already at home doing nothing. So why should the airlines get any money at all? Send the money to the people who need to pay rent.
They're not essential. Well, I like the way Europe did it. They're like paying the companies to not fire or lay off their employees, so they're getting furloughed. So they're saying we'll pay 90, 80% of your employee's salary, so you don't have to fire them. They can go home, take care of their families and their business, and stay off the streets, self-isolating, and they'll get the majority of their paycheck, enough to keep afloat. They won't lose their health care, but of course, in that case, they have health care for all, so it doesn't matter. But in our case, wouldn't that be the best case scenario? Because if you lay them off, they lose their health care too. If we could just figure out how to, like Europe, give the companies money, but stipulate you have to keep them on. You can't fire them. You gotta furlough them, send them home, pay them the majority of their paycheck. That seems like best case win-win to me. The companies get the money, they can stay open. The employees get what they need to stay afloat. But no, we've got some rigmarole, corporate coup, bullshit bill that the Republicans came up with. I guess we'll take the crumbs. I don't know what else we can do.
Well, that's how it's been since Reagan.
Yeah.
It's all been crumbs. Trickle down. That's all that trickles down is crumbs.
Yep.
That's all that ever trickles. If crumbs even come down. I mean, and I love hearing these Republicans saying, well, we can't increase unemployment benefits, because then people are going to be incentivized to just stay home. If they make more money staying home than they did working, they're not going to want to work. And I love those same Republicans are the ones who turn around the next day and say, America wants to get back to work. Our American workers are dedicated, hardworking people. They love. So which is it? Are they lazy freeloaders, or do they want to get back to work?
It's whatever fits their current narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever sounds good on the current soundbite. That really is.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I saw this soundbite with, I think it was Tucker Carlson. He was like, it was Sean Hannity saying point blank, this is a total hoax. They're just trying to sink Trump, blah, blah, blah. 2 weeks later, he's like, we got to take this seriously. We've always taken it seriously here at Fox News. And it's like, oh, my God. You do realize you're being videotaped or you're being recorded.
You do realize that, don't you? We have receipts, man. We have footage,
It just blows me away, man. And down in the corner is like Fox News. When Sean Hannity is not news, he's strictly opinion, and a bad opinion in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not news that he's just a talking head.
He's pro wrestling. That's all he is.
Is that why he likes Trump so much? Because Trump was in pro wrestling for a while.
No, not at all. No, he loves Trump because Hannity made out like a bandit in these tax cuts in 2017.
Ooh.
Made out like a bandit. Man. And then he just loves Republican narratives and talking points. And it doesn't matter if, Trump could stomp puppies in ski boots. And Hannity would say the puppies had it coming, It's, but did you hear about the Fox talking head that did lose her job because of that same narrative?
No. Wow. Do tell.
Her name is Trish Regan. Was her name?
I've heard of her.
Excuse me for the cough. It was right in the first 8 or 10 days of the COVID-19 outbreak, and she was just saying this is another Democratic attempt to impeach the president. It's a hoax. It's nothing. All that kind of thing. And it was just I don't know, Wednesday or Thursday last, where a very brief paragraph was put on the Fox News website saying that we have separated from Trish Regan. We wish her the best, and we thank her for her time, and we know she'll do well. So someone's head did roll, not Hannity's. Not their main cash cow. It's not his head, even though he said exactly the same thing.
Interesting.
But somebody did have to roll, and so they got the fairly new person coming in, the much lesser known personality, So I don't know, the politics everywhere, not just in Washington. Politics are everywhere.
Yeah, true. It's one of the reasons I like working from home so much is because you kind of get to avoid a lot of that office place gossip and politics.
Yeah. I get to focus. I've worked from home forever, and I just get to focus on the job at hand.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do interact with one of my coworkers, it's on a strictly technical level. And I can't tell you how refreshing that is. Yeah,
for sure. I hear you. Well, dude, this has been another. Where'd this hour go? It just flew right by. I kind of want to keep it, well under 2 hours because they get a little bit trickier to edit in that case, and I want to make sure I get this one up.
Yeah.
Because I think this one was a lot better than our last one. But before we go,
I ask you.
What?
Go ahead.
I was going to say before we go, I just wanted to bring up one last ray of hope, one last ray of sunshine. It's totally off topic, but let's see if you remember this. Do you remember Standing Rock and what was going on up there back in Obama's
Standing Rock?
Standing Rock Has to do with a pipeline going through the Sioux tribe's land, going
up in North Dakota.
Yep, going across under above a underground reservoir, basically the largest aquifer in the United States. Is this pipeline's going right across the top of it. And it was ugly. It was ugly for a while, and Obama was like, "Oh, let's let it work out." And no one came to their defense. It was ridiculous. But the Standing Rock Sioux tribe has seen an incredible win for justice. A federal court found that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers violated the National Environmental Protection Policy Act and is ordering the Corps to perform a full environmental impact study of the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Wow.
So, yeah, about time, they were cutting all the corners. And I think, if I remember right, Obama got a lot of flack and he put it on hold, but he wouldn't really step up to the plate and just condemn it completely. He was always like hemming and hawing and whatever. I can't remember. It might have been Trump who finally signed it and said, let's do it. More pipelines, yay. But that pipeline has already had some leakage and stuff, and some environmental issues. And
I have heard of that. Yeah. I do know there has been some.
So
leaks.
That's really good news in my opinion.
Ones,
yeah. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think they should have ever built that pipeline. Even as far south as Texas, they were buying up land, kicking people out of houses and stuff because that's where the pipeline was going to go through. I mean, before the pipeline even had the stamp of approval, they were doing this shit. It's crazy. So I'm kind of glad.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. I do. And just to, in our last breath here, to manufacture some possibly interesting content, I'll say, well, we still got to move the gas, though. We still got to move the oil. Do you want us to all just give up our cars tomorrow? Should we just give up airline travel tomorrow? That's what a lot of the far right ones are going to say. You want us all living in teepees and riding bicycles?
No, I don't. But I don't. Yeah. I don't want to pollute the biggest aquifer in the United States without taking precautions. And doing it right. There's a reason why oil tankers are double hulled now after Exxon Valdez spilled oil, right? Mm-hmm. There's precautions. There's things you can do. I mean, it's more expensive, but I was just at the pump the other day, and gas is about as low as I've seen it in memory. I think I paid like $1.80 something a gallon. I was like, wow,
really?
Yeah. I was at Costco, so that helps, but still, I've never found Costco to be that much cheaper than other gas stations.
The Phillips near my house is still $2.39, down from like $2.69 in the last month.
Wow. Well, maybe Costco is super cheap then, because I was impressed. I was surprised. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, on this aquifer thing though, it makes me wonder: how much would it have cost to route around the aquifer?
Yes.
Why did you insist on going right through it?
Yep.
Was it that much cheaper?
Yeah, go right over the Sioux tribe's land. I mean, are we going to give them their land or not? Yeah. We need to make up our minds. I mean, we keep giving it to them and then taking it away, or saying, oh, well, for the good of the corporations, we got to put this pipeline through your land. It's like, come on. It's got to be other ways. We can truck it. We can rail it. We can go around it with our pipelines.
Yeah.
There's got to be another way. And on top of it, this oil that they're putting through that pipeline is from the tar sands up in Canada, right? There's some of the gooeyest, stickiest, shittiest oil that you can put through a pipeline. Yeah. I mean, if that gets in our aquifer, water's already getting scarce and polluted. We got to start stepping up our game. I mean, I don't want to stop driving my car just yet, but on the other hand, we got to start protecting this planet, because what we're doing is not sustainable, and we need to improve our game.
And there again, we come back to the genius of America, which is the genius of compromise. We've got to find a way forward.
And the genius of technology and putting our smarts to the problem. Yeah. We can figure things out. Yeah. We've been to the goddamn moon. We can figure this out. I mean, corporations, you need to make a little bit less, and that would help a lot, I think. The capitalism,
just a little.
Capitalism is so greedy and so bottom line based, It's got to be a little bit more give and take. I mean, if capitalism fails in America, it's going to be because of the capitalists. It's their fucking fault. You know what I mean?
It may not happen for many generations, but I can see the French Revolution happening right here.
We can already see cracks. I mean, 10 years ago, we had a major recession, and now we're having another one. And yeah, you can blame it on the coronavirus, but people kind of thought it was going to happen right around the election anyway. It seems to happen in like 10-year increments. It's like, and nothing had really changed. You know, nothing was put into place to prevent what happened 10 years ago, prevent it from happening now. The only thing that was put into place is, instead of having to go to Congress to get this money to the banks when they need it, we'll just make it automatic. So now trillions of dollars are being pumped into the bank and the stock market, and I don't even understand it all. It's just so much money and so crazy. All I know. Yeah.
And, and harken back also, another one of Trump's fantastic lies on the campaign trail was, I've got this plan. I can not just reduce the national debt, but I can eliminate it in 8 years. I've got a plan for it. And now think back even before coronavirus. The economy is doing well. I'm doing well, and most everybody has been doing okay. But he increased the debt again by another $2 trillion from 19 to 21 trillion, and that was before coronavirus.
Yep.
So now we're going to throw another $2 trillion on top of that. So there's $4 trillion right there.
And it might turn out to be 6 or 10.
Or 10. I mean, it's $4 trillion already. That is half of what Obama added to it during 8 years.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to deal with the corona. Now, granted, he did have to deal with the Bush recession, but
which was major.
It was huge. Yeah. So there again, Lane Joe, I'm really, I can't help but agree with some of these Republicans out there who are starting to say, like Dick Cheney said, deficits don't matter. And you know what? Maybe they don't. Because my life is still going well, and all my friends and family, my community, people I see, my life is still going very well. And we went from 4 trillion when Bush took office to 10, 12, 16 trillion when Obama left office, and now we're at 21 trillion with Trump in office. Where's the end?
That's a good point.
Is 30 trillion the magic number, or is it 40 trillion, 100 trillion?
That's a good point, dude. And that's why I'm like, fuck it, give me my health care already. Yes, I'll pay more in taxes, but give me my Medicare for all. Give me my universal health service. You guys can't sit there and just skim off the top, skim off the top, skim off the top, and not give us anything. I mean, I want a stronger social safety net, period. Number one on my list. Number one. That's why I'm Bernie or bust. It's number one. I'm getting older.
Number one, yeah.
My wife has health issues. I need help. I need some security, or else you're going to find me struggling hard, and you're not going to want to see that.
Well, isn't it amazing, Main Joe, how, when you hear Republicans talk about Medicare for all, and they talk about trillions with a T, and that's just
how are we going to pay for
it?
How are we going to pay for
it? Unspendable amount of money. No way. But when we're talking tax cuts for billionaires,
COVID-19 stimulus package,
COVID-19, suddenly $1 trillion is a very understandable sum, isn't it?
I haven't heard. And one of the most frequent comments I see in the YouTube video comments section is like, ever notice how no one's talking about how we're going to pay for all this? It's just crickets. Yeah, all those people that used to be so vocal underneath certain videos about and slamming Democrats and snowflakes and all this, they've pretty much vanished from the comments section, dude. I don't see them anymore. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they disappear immediately. I told you all, during I think it was our Tuesday podcast, where I was, I guess the word's fortunate enough to be browsing Facebook right when Sean Hannity posted a link of some interview he was about to do or something. And so I was one of the first people to comment. And of course, I am anti-Sean Hannity, anti-Republican. And I could not believe the number. I mean, within 10 minutes, I had 200 responses from probably 20, 30 different people, just ripping me to shreds. You're a moron. You don't know what you're talking about. You know. But the thing is, when I started putting facts on the ground and refuting, you know, as many as I could, not one of them defended policy. Not one of them. All they did is say Trump's the best president ever, and Hannity is shedding truth and light on everything. You know, not one of them defended policy. It was just, you know,
that's amazing.
I don't know.
If you want to,
requires. Go ahead.
I was going to say one of my guilty pleasures is watching Jordan Klepper go to these Trump rallies and interview people. And you know who I'm talking about. I can tell by your laugh. You know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
This guy is I think he came out of The Daily Show. I think he came after Jon Stewart left, though. But he is so...
No, he was there.
Was he there before
Jon?
Because
yes,
I love this guy. I don't really watch Trevor Noah because I just can't resonate with him. I don't find him as funny. But Jordan Klepper, oh my gosh, this guy is awesome, man. He goes out to these Trump.
Really good.
He's so. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. Jordan Klepper is wonderful as a man on the street.
Yes, he's smart. He's quick. He knows how to take their own words and use it against them in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
He just leaves them flabbergasted, looking like fools, and it's crazy how these people don't think anything through.
And I think you and I have. I'm sure you've seen this one where he's at a Trump rally and prior to a Trump rally, and he's interviewing people out there waiting to get into the stadium, and he interviews some guy wearing a "Make America Great Again" red hat. And so, what's your big problem with Obama then? Why do you think Obama was such a disaster? And this guy actually said, "Well, you know, one of the main things." I'd like to know where Obama was during 9/11. You know, I'll bet he was out on the golf course, wasn't he? You know, where was he? And, you know, he certainly wasn't in the Oval Office. And Klepper didn't, you know, come right out and say, well, Obama wasn't president, you dipshit.
No.
He said, well, why is it, do you think Obama wasn't in the Oval Office on 9/11? Why do you think that? Well, I don't know, but I'd sure like to find out. You know?
Yeah. See, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't make them feel like fools necessarily. Right. Yeah, he's very good at that. And I saw that same clip, man. It was very good. But yeah, if you haven't seen Jordan Klepper yet, go check him out. Going to these Trump rallies and everything. It's really entertaining. And
Klepper, Klepper, Jordan Klepper.
And it lets you see who voted for Trump. And it's kind of scary, but it's so funny.
Well, and I want to be fair-minded. Main Joe is you're getting a very specific cross-section of Trump supporters. The ones who go to his rallies are really not the ones you want speaking for you if you were Donald Trump. You know, that's not who you want exposed on The Daily Show and network television. That's, you know, because there are decent people out there, very decent people out there that voted for Trump. You know, some of them voted for Obama twice and then voted for Trump. So it can be a little bit skewed. But I tell you, if you go to a Bernie Sanders rally, you don't see that kind of ignorance. You don't see that kind of, well, forgive me for using this, but that kind of knuckle-dragging, lowbrow ignorance. You just don't see it.
Yeah.
You know, at a Sanders or a Klobuchar or Elizabeth Warren, even a Joe Biden rally, you don't see that type of thing.
So I'd like to end the podcast on this, if I could ask you this. So you're very clear in how you're anti-Republican and you just have a hard time finding anything positive about them. But yet you keep bringing up this Beau of the Fifth Column and you're telling me that he is a Republican. So
yeah.
And I know I found it a little bit hard to resonate with him, so I didn't subscribe. I don't really listen to his videos. Can you tell me what it is about him that resonates with you and why you listen to him, being that he's a Republican and everything? And
yes, what a wonderful question. I can resonate with the man because he at the bottom of his heart, he is a humanitarian. He truly cares about the community, and he's like Becky Huff that we had on the podcast. He goes to hard hit areas and takes truckloads of supplies. And
does he really?
He does a lot of wonderful.
To Joe
things.
Salute to Beau of the Fifth Column.
Indeed. Beau of the Fifth Column. In fact, once you post this one, I'm gonna put one or two of his links out there, and and it might very well be, Main Show, that Beau and I simply found common ground in our opposition to President Trump. I don't know. I don't know if he was even around during the George W. Bush presidency. I would love to know what Beau thinks of George W. Bush. I don't know. But yeah, he said only one time in his life did he vote Democrat, and that was for county sheriff. And he voted for a guy who used to run bootleg moonshine with his grandpa. And he voted for him only because he was a friend of the family.
Sounds like Georgia to me.
Yeah, I think it is Georgia. I think it is, Main Joe. But if I could, I'll be very brief here, as brief as I can. This is one of the early podcasts I saw of his that really made me think this guy is solid. That this is a good man here. He got a truckload of supplies and he went somewhere down to Florida. I think it might have been after Hurricane Irma or one of them anyway. And he goes into town and he really didn't know where he was going. He didn't know where the hot spots were that really needed his supplies. And what he had was, diapers and baby wipes and formula and medicine and things like that, big truckload. And so he said, well, I went down and I could either go straight into this town over here or I could go right over this bridge and go to that section of town over there. And he says, well, I took a right and I went over the bridge and I found myself in gangland. This was a rough part of town. And I got out of my truck and I was immediately approached by 3 or 4 people I could only say were gangbangers with the bandanas and the, wearing the cutoffs and baggy jeans and whatever.
Yep.
And he said, they came up and said, what you doing here, white boy? Something to that effect. And he explained why he was there. I'm here to deliver supplies. You guys have been hit hard and I'm just here to try and help out. And they said, well, open your truck. Let's see what you got. So he shows them what they have. And Main Joe, I swear, this is what Beau said, was as soon as I showed him, I had boxes of diapers and baby formula. These gangbangers, early 20s, said, okay, well, this is where you got to go then. You go right down there. You're going to see Teresa and Marcy. They've got 2 3-year-olds, and their diapers are this size. And then go around the corner. You'll find some more over there. These gangbangers knew their community. They knew exactly who was in need and what they needed. They knew the size of the diapers these kids needed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Now, let me contrast that. So after he offloaded some supplies and left, and he went back over the bridge and he went into a more affluent part of town, into some gated communities, if you will. He pulled up in front of a house that looks like it had been hit pretty hard, gets out of his truck, opens the back of the truck, the door of the truck, and he's getting ready to offload supplies. And some asshole walks out with a gun on his hip saying, what are you doing here? He says, well, I'm here to, deliver some supplies. You guys just got hit pretty hard. I'm here to try and help out. And the guy said, essentially, well, if you loot, we shoot. And that was pretty much the extent of the conversation. That this guy in this affluent, gated community had no idea who was in need, what people had, which people had some babies at home that needed diapers, let alone what size the diapers were, anything like that. So that guy opened my eyes right there. He's on the front line. He's out there doing what he can. And then he'll come and tell you about his experience, just like Becky Huff.
That's awesome, dude. I'm going to have to give him another shot. That's so cool. To Joe, salute to him. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Can you give me an outro there, Main Joe?
Yes, indeed.
Who are you anyway? Mojo.
Yeah.
Here we go, buddy.
Who are you? Right on. Well, Main Joe, thanks once again for getting me out of my house on this beautiful Sunday evening. And, I'd love to say we're halfway through COVID-19, but who knows? But at any rate, you can count on us to be back in a day or two, and we'll talk some more. Thank you again for joining Two Joe's podcast. See you next time.